What are some of the biggest challenges you see law firms facing today, especially those law firms with an aggressive growth mindset?
Knowing your numbers as far as your bookkeeping, but also knowing your numbers with respect to your conversion percentages, with your marketing sources, with your sales conversions, all of that stuff. When people know their numbers, and sometimes that's a big boulder to move. Sometimes there's mindset things because numbers can't lie. We can bend the truth on just about anything, but not numbers. So once we get them over whatever's preventing them from knowing their numbers, we don't really have to implement anything. There's going to be instant growth.
If you're an attorney in the pursuit of a successful law practice, fulfilling career, and the life of your dreams, this podcast has it all. Behind the Bench gives you great tools to overcome the unique challenges you face every day as a law firm owner. Welcome to Behind the Bench podcast with your host, Josh Konigsberg, author, partner, and co-founder of Law Firm Marketing Pros and lifelong entrepreneur.
Welcome to another captivating episode of Behind the Bench podcast. This is your host, Josh Konigsberg, and as many of you know, I'm a digital marketing expert specializing in helping lawyers generate more qualified leads online and thus enhance their law firm revenues. Join us as we explore the fascinating realm of law, featuring insightful discussions, seasoned lawyers, legal experts, and industry leaders. Special thank you to our sponsor, Law Firm Marketing Pros. They get you more leads, more clients, and more profits.
Super excited today to have on the show Paul Angelle. Paul's entrepreneurial journey started in his father's Cajun restaurant in South Louisiana. He learned the ropes of business ownerships from a young age. With degrees in political science, English, and criminal justice, Paul excelled in sales across multiple industries over his 20-year career. He later founded a media company, earned a law degree, and became COO of a statewide law firm, tripling its revenues in just 5 years. Now, as founder of Law Familia, Paul helps businesses grow while enjoying life on his small farm in Sunset, Louisiana. I love the name, Paul. Welcome. Super excited to have you. As I mentioned, it's funny, you and I have kind of known each other know of each other over the years, but we never actually met until recently. So really a wonderful pleasure to make your acquaintance and get to know you.
It was at least 5 times. Like different people said, "Well, you know Josh, right? I've seen you all together. You've seen us close together, but we hadn't officially met."
Right. What's the proximity thereof that they're referencing, right? So let's just jump right in. Paul, can you tell us about your background from working full-time at your father's Cajun restaurant in South Louisiana to your journey through sales, law, and then eventually coaching?
Well, I don't know how old I look, but I was dating myself. I started working full-time at a restaurant with my dad in 1983. Now, I'm in Louisiana, and he's my dad, so we don't have a lot of states have labor laws about children and stuff. Right. I don't think any of it applied to me, but I was young, and what I picked up from all of that, aside from I could really cook Cajun seafood. You don't know anybody who's boiled more crawfish than I have. We did about 40,000 pounds a week for 10 years. And most of that time I was by myself. But I watched my dad become an entrepreneur, left a cush job at the bank, and decided to open a restaurant because he was a really good cook. And he, in spite of some pretty dumb things that he did as a business owner, he had some success, quite a bit of success. There were some things he couldn't control, but for 30 years, that restaurant was there. But I remember as a kid, we'd be sitting outside and he'd be waiting for a delivery or something because everything had to be fresh, right? Nobody's buying frozen seafood in South Louisiana, right? Similar Florida problem. Well, I would watch the employees show up for their shift, and there would be, I don't know, we were on kind of a mini highway, so there'd be garbage in front of the front door, and he would watch all of his staff step over the garbage and into the restaurant. and his language was a little colorful. It aggravated him. And then we had this guy, he wasn't all there, but he was a great guy. And he would come on the weekends and wash the dishes without fail. If he saw trash in front of the front door, he picked it up. He was someone that I felt was proud of his job. He thought of the restaurant the way my dad thought of it. My dad thought of it, this is how I'm going to pay my bills. This is how I'm going to do the things I want to do. Well, he was happy to have a job. He took pride in his place and he saw it. I mean, everybody saw it. Everybody stepped over the trash. But what I realized and watched my dad appreciate, what I later figured out is something called ownership. And that stayed with me. While I'm sure it's a marketable skill in being able to manage a restaurant, and I can flair bartend a little bit. I can flip bottles. I can boil crawfish. I can cook just about anything. But I think that ownership, that lens of ownership, because it was my dad's restaurant. So I looked at it. I was proud of it. I mean, even as a kid, I would tell my teachers to come with their families to come eat at the restaurant. They could see me, at night, bussing tables or washing dishes or whatever I was doing back then. That stayed with me. I never wanted to be the person that the owner watched step over a piece of trash. I never wanted to be that person, because it was just, that to me was just the worst. And so having that sense of ownership has really served me well, regardless of what I was doing. And I know as I grew older and started having my own jobs and my own businesses and my own stuff, I always looked for that. I looked for that ownership, because it's easy to have it when you're the owner, but it's some next level. It's every A player that you have on your team has some ownership, right? Maybe not equity based or whatever, but that was my big takeaway from that experience. My problem, when I was in college, I started waiting tables. I learned that when you wait tables in a restaurant, you come from the back of the house to the front of the house. If you ever had any experience in restaurants, it's a clear divide. It's different kinds of people. Very few people work both. Well, I found out that in half the time I could make twice the money with tips. And I was an exceptional waiter, because for at least a decade, I had cooked everything on that menu. I knew I could break it down. I could explain it. I could tell you if the kitchen did it right. Like I was a really strong waiter. And as a result, I was making so much money waiting tables that when I graduated with those illustrious liberal arts degrees, English, political science, criminal justice, in the early 90s, I was netting $50,000 or $60,000 cash working 20 hours a week.
Wow.
You know what they were paying people with degrees in political science, English, or criminal justice to work 40 hours a week, and you're supposed to wake up early in the morning, and they want to take taxes out. It was just a non-starter. I just wasn't interested. So the only way I could get into the job force was to get into sales. And later, as a result, when I did sales management and sales training, I put a lot of weight into people who had waited tables or bartended, because I knew that if you were successful doing that, it's because you had the ability to upsell, or you could take someone that wanted a rum and Coke, you could tell them about Bacardi or 151, or you could upsell them to a more expensive one, because whatever percentage people tip.
Right.
The bigger the bill, the bigger the tip. Whether they're 10, 20, 30, whatever it is, the bigger the bill, the bigger the tip. So the more business, the more money. I figured that out. It followed me through sales. I was very successful in B2B sales. I actually made the successful jump from B2B salesman to sales manager, which isn't always, sometimes it's competing skill sets. My first 6 months on the job, I called my old manager and apologized profusely for all of the things that I put him through, that I was now being put through. I was stereotypical sales rep. I had a drinking problem. I was an HR nightmare. I was just, but it was okay, because my manager would bail me out, because I was always at quota, and that was what mattered there.
Right.
Eventually, I started doing sales training. corporate wise. And I really liked that. It was almost like my mom was a teacher and it was kind of like teaching, but I really felt like if I would spend a week with like a class, incoming class or a moving up class, I could help them. I worked for a while in a telecom data company, and I moved up pretty well. I was a regional director. I had multiple states. I was a road warrior. Really enjoyed the job. The company merged with another company, and I got one of those office space conversations. Like, what exactly do you do on a daily basis? And I was like, I guess this gravy train's over. So I took a job with a wireless company. It merged with another wireless company. My role changed, and I realized I needed a little bit more education. And in my 30s, I decided to go in New Orleans. I was working in New Orleans. So I went to Loyola, New Orleans Law School. They had a night program. My little sister went with me. In fact, she kind of is the reason I went. She was getting her master's or something. And I was teasing her about there's no jobs for that master's. And she said she was going to law school. And I said, don't go to law school. There's too many lawyers. There's too many people in law. And at the time, there were more people in law school than there were lawyers.
Now there's a shortage, right?
That was the case then. And she said, well, you're just bitter because you couldn't get into law school. I said, no, I could have got in. I decided I didn't want to go. And she said, I'm sure that's what everybody who can't get into law school says. And little history, my sister, we grew up poor. We didn't have a lot of money, but we were both very competitive and were very good at sports. So we got to go to the ritzy, nice Catholic school that had the state champion in every sport, reputation. We got to go there for free. I don't think they call it an academic scholarship, but it was a work study. We Windexed windows for 30 minutes one day in the summer, and we got free tuition forever.
Wow.
But that competition, her saying that I couldn't get in, is probably what pushed me over the edge, because that escalated. We were celebrating her graduation. We had been drinking champagne. I wasn't going to let anybody leave that party that was there that heard her say that, think that I couldn't get into law school if I wanted to. And I showed her. But I realized in my last semester that I had absolutely no interest whatsoever in practicing law ever. And that was rough because I decided to finish, but I never took the bar exam, never sat for it. And because I constantly got the question, why don't you take the bar exam and practice law? You finished law school. Why? You're almost there. So to combat that, I created businesses. I created a sports photography business, turned into a media company. I grew it, turned it into a publication that I sold. I took the money that I made from the publication, invested it into a friend of mine was starting a solar panel company, and we grew that solar panel company. And then when I saw some credits were going away, I kind of cashed in my chips and went to my best friend's law firm in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. She was my best friend in law school, and she graduated #1. She was the smartest, best student there. And probably why we became friends, because I needed someone smarter than me to hang out with. Well, I went to her firm. I said, she didn't have a job posted or anything. I was like, hey, good news. I have decided I will come work for you, and I will do whatever you need me to do. But what I'd like to do is study at work and eventually take the bar, pass it. And they did estate planning and elder law. We can open an office in my town, because I was commuting like 80 miles to go there. And she said, well, we could use you. We have no receptionist. My paralegal was manning the receptionist desk, but my paralegal, Stephanie, was a perfectionist, and I knew this about her. And I can imagine any paralegal that worked for her was going to be, unless they were a perfectionist, was going to be absolutely miserable. So I said, I'll be the best paralegal. I'll be the best receptionist. And I was, man, I put on a clinic being a receptionist. I was hilarious. I got everything's done. I commandeered all the lawyers' calendars. I started paying attention to their schedules. I started pointing out inefficiencies. I saw their comp plan was atrocious. It was awful. They didn't have any kind of follow-up system for their seminars. Their marketing was all word of mouth. They had some problems. One of the problems was and their comp plan was the main culprit. They paid the lawyer 10 grand a month. And then anything over 20 grand they brought in that month, they could split 50-50. Well, that math doesn't really math. The problem with that, you could see it, but it was just too much. I came from sales. No, stop. But what they were doing is they were doing it every month. So there was no consistency. A lawyer would do 50,000 in January and then 0 in February, and then maybe 10,000 in March, and then 40,000 in April. So in February, they're getting 50% of 30 grand on top of their 10.
Right.
And then in February, they're bringing in 0, but they're still getting their 10. And then the next month, they're bringing in 10 and they're taking 10. So March was a wash. February was a 10K loss. And they brought in 50 grand. So they bring in 60 grand. It wasn't enough. It wasn't. Right. So I told her, I said, you need to fix that. And you can't increase the quota. That's what you hired them at. You can't say, oh, this was the comp plan when I hired you, but now I'm changing it. So the change we made was to make it quarterly. Because I knew what salespeople did. We manipulated the comp plan by any means necessary. We were all coin operated. And that instantly normalized revenue. And then I said, we do is KPIs. They have to have a certain number of initial appointments a month. They have to have a certain number of second appointments. They have to do so many networking activities. Whatever the thing was, we were keeping track of the activity, not just the revenue, because salespeople, they don't care about anything but the revenue. And she had turned all these lawyers into salespeople. So I knew how to manage salespeople. So I was managing them by using what I knew, KPIs, tracking activity, knowing what numbers needed to happen, and giving bonuses quarterly. When I started working there, they were like at 800-something thousand. They hadn't paid their house note in 3 months. I almost didn't go to work there because I don't know what kind of bank you're dealing with or what kind of mortgage you have, but I don't have one of those. If I don't pay my house note 3 months in a row, I'm living at your house or in my car. That's not my deal. And that was 2015 that they did the 800. 2016, I started in January. We crossed 1 million, but more importantly, it's a husband and wife lawyers. They had a total owner benefit of over 100,000. So they went from 0 to over 100,000. Now, you don't go to law school to split 100,000 in income, but that's way better than 0.
That's right.
2019, we were just over 3 million. Their total owner benefit was just under 1 million. And we were going to do 5 million in 2020. We had momentum. We had a new office. We had the bad people were off the bus and the right people were on the bus. We had policy systems and procedures. We were clicking. We were efficient. We were effective. Everybody knew who does what by when. I was running that firm at that point. In fact, at one point in the first 6 months I worked at that firm, they said, why don't you be the COO of the firm? How much would it cost? And I gave him a number and he said, done. And I was like, crap, I should have asked for more. That was fast. That was quick. But I was exceptional. We grew it. We did hit 4 million in 2020, even though we lost 4 months of billing, basically.
Right. COVID, yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then my friends found out what a lot of lawyers find out. Your children aren't quite as remarkable as you expected them to turn out, right? You're these high achieving, skip grades, valedictorian, law student, scholarship earners. They were picking out what law school their kids would go to. One of them said Stanford. Well, when they tell you, we need to hold your daughter back again in kindergarten because she's not ready for first grade. This was almost caused an anxiety problem for these young parents who had already decided they were going to go to Stanford Law School.
Right.
So they decided after multiple issues and changing schools and all this stuff, they were going to homeschool their daughter. I wasn't really doing all that much anymore. I mean, I had systematized the firm. I did a move and I handled the entire move, which that project management was time consuming. But for the most part, that firm was on autopilot. In the last year I worked there, I wrote a book, got it published at work. I researched my grandfather's World War II. He was a pilot in the Pacific. I learned about that. I taught myself to fly a drone in the parking lot at work. If I was really doing my job as a COO for that law firm, I would have said, hey, what the hell is this Paul guy doing? We're paying way too much money. He's not doing anything.
Right.
So it dawned on me, this isn't a full-time job once you've got the policy systems and procedures in place. Because of my JD, the lawyers listened to me. Like they allowed me to talk to them where they wouldn't listen to anybody else that wasn't. I mean, I barely got it. I never took the bar, but I was in the club. So I realized that I could probably do it for multiple firms at the same time.
And that's how you transition to coaching.
Right. My severance was they were just going to keep me on payroll for a year and keep me on insurance. And I just published a book. So it was a great time to write a second book, right? If you got a salary for a year, why not write a book? You're never going to have a better opportunity to do that.
Yeah, right.
And I was thinking about doing that. I was starting to make my outlines and, schedule my time stuff. But I updated my resume and I put it online. And a management company that offered C-suite services to multiple law firms called me within an hour or two of me posting that resume. Apparently they had 3 boxes to check. You needed a JD, you needed 5 years or more as a C-suite executive in a law firm, and you needed to have displayed an ability to create successful businesses that were profitable that you sold. I checked all 3 boxes.
Right.
That was rare. Usually the people that would work for this company, they check the heck out of 2 out of 3.
Yeah, right.
Really checked 2, but nobody checked all 3. Who would do that? I was embarrassed of that resume. And I really, really thrived doing that. But it wasn't multiple firms. It was 30 firms. I was a fractional CEO for 30 consecutive.
Wow. Okay.
And I loved it. I loved the growth. Everybody grew. Everybody listened. Everybody, it was really an awesome experience with the clients. Right away we could hit the ground running because I started and I did all the different practice areas, all the different parts of the country, and it was great. I was commuting 80 miles one way, and I went from that to not even having to wear pants. I never left my house. It was amazing.
Right.
And I live in Sunset, Louisiana, like you said. It's not Miami, Florida.
Right.
I was making a Miami, Florida salary, but I was living ghetto fabulous in Sunset, Louisiana. Life was awesome. Both political parties would send people to get me to donate for elections. And, I never let anybody pick up the tab when we'd go out to dinner because I was a 1%er in Sunset.
Yeah, right.
That was a great experience. Almost 3 years I did that. The company did some reorganizations. Suddenly I didn't have a job there anymore. Without warning, I wasn't ready. But I figured, man, I found a job in less than an hour. How tough is it to be? So I put my resume out again now with this new experience. And I got some job offers, but they were all less than half of what I was making. And so I figured that was fast. I don't want to go work for somebody because they're better than nothing. I wouldn't want someone to work for me because I was better than nothing. I want someone that gets it, appreciates the role, wants to do the job. And that's what I wanted to do. So a month went by with really nothing that interested me. So I was used to working from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. without a break. And my time was very structured. I go to the gym at 5. At 5:30, I go feed all my animals. I live on a farm. And by 6:30, I've washed my hands, put on a clean shirt, and I'm sitting ready to work. I started putting everything I had into organic marketing. I was just going to create my own business doing what I did. But if I'd rather put 100% of myself into my own thing than work somewhere where I'm secretly looking for a job and halfway doing it. And that's what I've been doing since January.
Okay, and great.
So at least once a week, I have to remind myself to follow my own advice. because now I'm the entrepreneur who needs the coach. And so I'm coaching myself.
There you go. It's an amazing story. Thanks for sharing. So what are some of the biggest challenges you see law firms facing today, especially those law firms with an aggressive growth mindset?
Well, I'm really afraid of law firms with an aggressive growth mindset who don't know their numbers. That's when I start working with someone, if they don't have a bookkeeper, I don't care how good they are in bookkeeping, that is not the highest, best use of your time. It isn't,
That's right.
unless you really stink at lawyering, in which case, why are we doing this? But got to know your numbers. You got to know your financial reports. Get a bookkeeper, and get a bookkeeper that works with law firms. That's important. It's very important, because sloppy bookkeeping, I have a close personal friend that can't practice law for the next 2 years because of sloppy trust bookkeeping. That's a risk. That's a risk. And when you're a law firm, you can't do that to people. You're bringing in professionals who decided to work for you, and you lose your ability to have a business that you have to make sure that's right. So knowing your numbers as far as your bookkeeping, but also knowing your numbers with respect to your conversion percentages, with your marketing sources, with your sales conversions, all of that stuff. When people know their numbers, and sometimes that's a big boulder to move. Sometimes there's mindset things, because numbers can't lie. We can bend the truth on just about anything, but not numbers. So once we get them over whatever's preventing them from knowing their numbers, we don't really have to implement anything. There's going to be instant growth. Just the awareness of what are the cost of goods sold? What's the most profitable thing we do? Where is my time best served? What should I delegate? What should I do myself? All that reveals itself when you know the numbers. So I'm relieved when people know their numbers and they impress me, but most of the time they partially know them, or they don't know them at all, and they're in ignorance is bliss kind of mode, which is not a good mindset if you're trying to rapidly grow your firm. You're going to fail if you don't know.
So with the diverse background that you have, and it's incredibly diverse between entrepreneurship, sales, and law, what are the important lessons that you've learned that you can now apply to your specific coaching process or practice?
Well, I had this misguided idea that you're a salesman and you get promoted out of doing the sales work, and you become a manager of salespeople, or you become a trainer of salespeople, or you go to law school and you don't have to sell anymore. Like I believe that relatively recently, but working with law firms, I realized the things that you learn as a salesperson are so valuable to lawyers, because it's a radically different skill set than what a lawyer does. So I was a big proponent, a big believer of using non-attorney salespeople. I mean, you got to manage that because there's laws about it, but you can absolutely do it. But I find conversion percentages increase because lawyers believe they believe you can't really sell unless you know all the answers and you know everything, and you're giving free legal advice or discounted legal advice in a sales situation. It's not the highest, best use of your time, and somebody can do it better than you, probably. But if you're a lawyer who is exceptional at sales, I might not want to hire you as my lawyer, because it's a different skill set, and it probably means you've got some deficiencies there. So what I learned, all of that is understanding how to sell, how to be consultative, how to be a servant, how to teach, how to sell for them instead of to them. Like all of the questions, the tie downs, the organization, the active listening, all of that stuff. Those are skills that, used car salesman has. Someone selling a rainbow vacuum cleaner door to door has. They've read these Zig Ziglar and Brian Tracy sales books. I recommend every lawyer go and read those Sales 101 sales books, because I promise you they've never read it. And there's things that salespeople know a low level salesperson knows that a high level attorney doesn't know. And you want to,
That's right.
it's all about differentiating yourself. It's all about being able to do something that others can't, or do it in a different, better, faster, stronger way. Understanding just the basics of sales and how to delegate it and how to know who's good at that. That wasn't something I outgrew. That was something that was part of my foundation, like my little ownership tick, that's that. No matter what business I was in, whether I was the entrepreneur, whether I was cooking in a kitchen, no matter what, the most important thing is turning non-customers into customers.
Right.
And
that's right.
Doesn't matter how good a lawyer you are if you don't have any signed, engaged clients.
Nothing happens till somebody sells something.
Exactly. So that's what I learned, was that everybody's selling. Some people aren't very good at it, and some people just don't realize it.
So you talk to us about your success with your friend Stephanie and moving on, and then you had 30 clients, law firm clients. Can you share just one more success story that you just were so proud of, the client being able to execute and then your ability to help them?
Yeah. Well, it starts with getting them to trust you and getting them to listen to you, because a lot of this, if you're coaching 30 different law firms, you've got all these, beehives of drama and snowflake problems that, they're all different, but they're all the same. Because of my sales background, I was usually pretty good at connecting with people quickly. And the sooner you connect, the sooner you can connect with someone, the quicker trust evolves. Right. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the things my managers would fuss at me about. You're too close to the clients. How can you hold them accountable if you're friends with them? And the logic made sense. But I was also pretty particular about my numbers. I'm really like a freak about KPIs and numbers, and I look at my stuff daily. I'd be a terrible investor in the stock market because I would be just staring at it all day. But I knew that on average, my members or my customers were growing way above the average. And in every category, I was either number one or number two with growth, because that's ultimately what the clients were paying the company for, is they wanted to grow and manage their firms. And it's like, if what you're saying is true, and logically it makes sense, you can't hold people accountable if you're too close to them. It's one of the arguments against hiring all your kids to come work for you. But it takes longer for that trust to evolve. So I was really, really strong at getting them to trust me. But as far as a specific instance, I didn't have a whole lot of those Groundhog Day calls where we'd have a call every week and it was like, oh, you didn't do it again. Oh, you didn't do it again. Let's, for next week, do it. Oh, you didn't do it. We had to just keep doing it. That was frustrating to me. I had a member who said, I'm in this small town and everybody in this small town wants to do business with me because I own the firm. It was my dad's name before me. So it's the only law firm in this tiny little town. And I needed help. He was growing. So he hired an attorney from the big city. And the attorney from the big city, actually international, came from the Middle East, really didn't fit into this farming community at all. Everybody already wanted him, not the underling, and they were just more comfortable with him. And he was like, how do I get people to want to work with this lawyer? He's smarter than me. He went to a better law school than me. He's better. Well, we looked at his rates. He was charging $250 an hour, and the other lawyer was charging $200. So he said, well, they'll pay more for me, but maybe that'll make them say, oh, well, he's cheaper. I was like, it's not a big enough difference. Increase him to $250 and increase yourself to $500. And he laughs and he says, boy, you don't know what it's like here. There is no way a lawyer is going to get $500 an hour in this town. You're not from here. And I'm like, you're right. I don't know what it's like there, but that's what I want. That's why I said that number. That's a big number there. I figured The point is make it a big enough difference to where they're like, oh, it's half as much to go with the other lawyer. We'll go with the other lawyer. Now, we usually spoke 3 times a month. So it was rare, but I think there was a vacation for him. We didn't talk for 3 weeks. 3 weeks, I didn't communicate with him. So I was ready for him to say, yeah, I couldn't do that. It was too much. I was like, so did you do it? He said, I did. I was like, awesome. Did it work? Nope. I was like, it didn't work? He goes, no. I was like, man, I thought it would work. He goes, but I don't care. I'm getting $500 an hour and I'm working 40 hours a week. Hell yeah, I'm making money. This is awesome. It was the best idea I ever heard in my life. Eventually, the other lawyers started, building a clientele, and it became less and less of a problem. In fact, they got a third lawyer. But that was the one thing that impacted that firm. I mean, within the next 12 months, he had 2 more locations. And that was not even part of the plan when I started working with him. It was that double your rate.
That's great.
Nobody hires you. And they hired him anyway.
So let's talk a little bit about trends and developments. What trends do you see shaping the law firm, the future of law firm marketing, both digital and traditional?
Well, I think there's going to be a much greater importance placed on it. I'm seeing a lot more specialization. I remember.
Can you be more specific?
Well, digital marketing used to be, we would be your digital marketing company or agency. And then it became a little bit more specialized. We just do law firms, or we do medical practice, just do car dealers. And then I've seen even more specific where we do personal injury law firms. We do family law firms. The specialization, I see more and more of that. And the reason for that is because that's usually the longer you do something, the more you find your niche. And that's why I love doing business with people who have a niche, because that tells me they're no longer saying yes to everybody, like a brand new, like me this year. You want to pay me? I have no other questions. Let's get started. But then you start to realize this is not a fit, or this doesn't make sense, or the success, you'd be probably better off with someone else. That specialization is really the future. And the reason it's the future, when you talk about trends, in Utah and in Arizona, right now, you can own a law firm and not be a lawyer. Right. That's crazy talk just 2 or 3 years ago. And that's what's coming. That's kind of sweeping. So I see in the future, you're going to see more and more of that. But what's happening is in Arizona, there was a 100-plus-year-old established firm with 80-plus lawyers shut down. Because new firms backed by hedge fund, Wharton, equity firms that could come in and run a business like a business, not like a law firm, they were crushing the law firms. Because the law firms, I don't say they're stubborn, but they've kind of got this unspoken agreement that we just do it the way it's always been done. If you do a good job, the customers will come to you. And that slowed the need of specialized, specific, productive, accountable marketing. The importance is going up, which means you're going to see more specialization. That's my theory. I don't have a crystal ball.
So you're talking about ABA Rule 5.4, and we do know it's coming, and I'm glad this came up. So what can a law firm, let's just say in Ohio, and it's has not been approved in Ohio, but let's just say in 2 or 3 years, it's going to be, what can a small law firm or even a medium-sized law firm do to prepare for that change?
What they should do is what more and more people are doing is realizing we need consulting, we need coaching. That's why you've seen this rise in coaches and consultants that specifically cater to law firms. It's usually a high margin business because you're not selling a whole lot of products, you're selling time. But it's a culture where you are not. I went to law school. They did not teach anybody anything that remotely sounded like business acumen or business training. Right. And nobody goes to law school after their finance degree or their MBA. Some do, but it's rare. it's usually people like me: English, political science, history, pre-law, sociology. Those are the kind of undergrads that go to law school. I'll take it a step further. I think it's a conspiracy. I think that they're so in bed with big law,
I agree.
money from big law, that they
I
want
agree.
to
I agree.
discourage any young head full of mush from thinking that anything but disaster will come to them if they hang a shingle.
I could not agree with you more. That's right. So what I see is that in order to protect yourself, and eventually you could build it to sell it, but if you get the business coaching that you need to operate it as a real business, and with that, have really good effective marketing, so you begin to gain market share and create a barrier for potential threats. I see those are the two things that the lawyers should be looking at doing. Would you agree?
The old way is not going to work anymore. And
that's right.
That's becoming obvious. And I had the benefit because I worked with law firm owners who were in different states. In Arizona, it's not hard to sell law firm coaching in Utah and Arizona. It's easy to sell. I mean, it's not hard to sell. It's definitely something that's needed, and you get results if you are if you find someone that's good that knows what they're talking about. But they don't necessarily need to have an MBA from Wharton or MIT or something like that. They just need to not think like a lawyer and think like a business owner. And it's like sales and lawyering. It's skill sets that aren't necessarily the same. You have to put it by. It's not how smooth you are in court. It's not how much you can manipulate the Constitution. It's not how cleverly you can draft a motion. All that's great. It's a business, and it's whether you're boiling crawfish, making pies, you have the Mustang Ranch in Las Vegas. It doesn't matter. A business is a business is a business, and it needs at the beginning marketing, and then it needs sales, and everything else is after that. So as the marketing evolves, I just imagine. I mean, I could be wrong, but you're going to see more and more specialization. You're not going to see people market as marketers or marketing agencies for law firms that do anything but law firms. In fact, I think you're going to start to see them specialize. We do criminal law. We do personal injury. We do family law. We do, there's practice areas. I'm sure there's practice areas you don't want to do.
Well, 100% there are.
There's other practice areas you love doing. So over time, you start doing less of what you don't like and more of what you do like, where you can make the most impact. And that's how the niches evolve, whether you plan for it. And that's with the greater importance because the greater competition is coming from these firms right out the gate that are beating traditional law firms 3-1. And it's not even close.
Yeah, I see it every day. So for law firms that are aggressive, growth-minded with aggressive goals, where should they prioritize their resources?
Okay. It depends upon the resources. If it's a problem, if you have not enough clients coming in, that's a problem. It's also a problem if you have too many clients. Want to do what you can to get clients. You need to market, you need to sell, but you want to be scaling. So be aware of what it costs. Growth is expensive. And it's why everybody doesn't rapidly grow, because they don't have the money. If you want to go from $1 million law firm to a $10 million law firm, great. But that means your marketing budget just went from 100,000 to $1 million or more. And
that's right.
You paying it on the front end. So if you told me you wanted to be a $10 million law firm and you were a $1 million law firm and you wanted to be 10 million at the end of the year, I could deliver it, but it's going to cost you $10 million.
They can't afford it.
Right. So that's not
unless they won the lottery or came into an inheritance.
Around, it would make sense because you would now be a $10 million law firm and it wouldn't take $10 million to maintain it. But to get there, it's going to cost almost as much, to get to that next level.
That's right. How is technology impacting the way law firms operate and market themselves? And what should they be investing in to stay competitive?
the technologies was there, but I think that COVID taught a lot of smaller, ambitious law firms that you don't need 25,000 square feet and a bunch of corner offices for all these people that are in the office all the time. In fact, I helped a lot of small law firms pull off some coups by stealing some rock stars from some big firms who were not willing to be flexible on the whole work from home.
That's right. That's right.
Hybrid situation. And while people like to make money, it's the number one reason people change jobs. It's money, but it's not 50%. There's other reasons they want work-life balance. They want time with their family. They want satisfaction. They want to not be micromanaged. Whatever their thing is, it's not always money. And we have a tendency to assume that. But that really brought those technologies, because Zoom pre-COVID and Zoom today is two completely different animals. The dependence and the understanding of case management systems and CRMs are really coming into play. People are understanding the reason you want to know your numbers. And you probably know this, most law firms before COVID, if they use 10 or 12% of their case management or CRM software, they were in the top half of users. They use it just for billing, or they use it, the integrity of the data. There's so many things you can do with this technology, including automating and maintaining all your follow-up, all your marketing, your email list. All that stuff is automated. And then you bring the surgence of AI involved. Now, I'm not a proponent of having AI write your briefs and do lawyering. We're far away from that. That was a really embarrassing for one lawyer in particular that used ChatGPT to do some legal work. But AI is taking on a lot of those tedious tasks, and it's freeing up your staff to do things and it's not even just technology. Your workers don't even need to be in the United States anymore.
That's right. Well, we see it. Yeah, we see it. A significant amount of that. That's right. So what should a law firm look for when choosing partners, and more specifically a digital marketing agency as a partner?
I would say they've got to speak the language. One of the problems that I was told by lawyers is they didn't really understand what the KPIs or what the metrics that the marketing company, for example, was measuring. But they're lawyers. They pretend to understand. Your organic SEO ranking has tripled. Great. All right. Well, let's double our budget. The phone's not ringing. That's the KPI they understand. But the lingo is not. So I would advise them, depending on how sophisticated they are with marketing terminology, because some lawyers really get all that stuff on a high level, but most of them don't. And look for someone that can explain it in terms that you understand and knows that, hey, this is what matters. What matters is we've impacted the revenue, or we've impacted the number of new cases, or we've impacted the number of phone calls. Right. Not some other intangible, word of the day in the industry. So I would usually encourage people to say, these are my KPIs. Explain what your KPIs match mine. And that's probably would be the first check I would box, the first box I would check, because I understand what they're delivering. I understand what success looks like. I know how to measure it.
And if you don't understand, ask.
Absolutely. But that's a big ask.
So let's all be humble so we all understand, so we're all on the same page. That's how I look at it. So
and it works. And it's, I've been exposed to some extremes on both sides, but the reality is it's trial and error. When people would say, oh, we need to sign a several $1,000 multi-year contract, and you've never done digital marketing before, that's not a partner. That's someone that's locking you in. Get someone that wants to work with you, that wants that sees it as a relationship where the two companies are interdependent on each other. And that's what you're looking for. The same as you would look for an employee or you would look for any other vendor.
So any last minute nuggets of wisdom that you can impart to the audience for those aggressive, growth-minded law firms?
Well, I'm a planner. I'm big on planning. I mean, I plan things that don't need to be planned. I plan. I have backup plans. I have contingencies. I'm a planner, but decisive action beats planning every day. I mean, at least at the onset. It's not sustainable, but for example, the podcast. I have a podcast. I hadn't had it long. I'm already embarrassed of the first one. But that first one was the most important one because I actually did it. And
right.
I took the action. I took the leap. I brought in, you've got to, not everything's going to work, but you miss all the shots you don't take.
That's right. That's right. So now we move on to our lightning round. This is where people get to know, like, and trust you a little bit more. So this is just some personal questions. I'm going to fire 10 questions. Just answer them as they come to mind. So are you ready?
Okay. Well, you've been warned. I don't have a filter.
What never fails to make you laugh?
Reruns of Seinfeld. I can watch the same one again and again and laugh every single time.
I love it. Best compliment you ever got?
My son, who went bald at 25, I'm 53, he asked me to cut my hair because he thought I was taunting him. I was growing it a little long back then.
A person that you would trade places with for one day? Past, present, future, doesn't matter.
I would have said Tom Brady, but he's retired-ish, although I have heard rumors about him maybe going play in again this season. But it would be one of these immortal athletes that just gets everything right. That's clutch. I was an athlete, but I peaked in high school, and
right.
I always wanted to be that person that got to be on the team, and it all mattered.
Love it. Guilty pleasure.
I got the 2025 NCAA football game for my PlayStation 5, and I'm probably in 4 weeks. I've won the national championship 9 straight times with the Louisiana Raging Cajuns.
Okay. I love it. Biggest risk you ever took?
I moved from small town of Carencro, Louisiana, out into New Orleans, the bigger city, with no job prospects or anything. Just moved there in the hopes of eventually opening a version of my father's restaurant. I had no funding. I had no money. I had no job. I just moved. I didn't have a place to move. I had a U-Haul, and I was looking at apartments and rental houses when I got there. That is not normal to me. That's not how I plan.
I would say so. And the worst piece of advice you ever got?
Yeah, take your money out of the bank and buy some crypto.
Okay.
That one's still stinging a little bit.
What do you wish you were better at dealing with?
Traffic.
Okay, there you go. What's the one thing that you would like to change about yourself?
I wish I was taller.
Okay.
I could have been a contender if I was, wasn't 5'10". If I was 6'2" or taller, I would have been.
Yeah.
Everything would have been different.
Yeah, I agree. I feel the same way. What are you most passionate about?
My kids. I love to talk about my kids. I love that they succeed. I'm usually there to defend them. I'm usually there to help them. I'm extremely proud of them. And that's probably my favorite topic.
That's awesome. So tell us one thing that most people don't know about you.
I am an Eagle Scout.
Wow. Okay. There you go. Congratulations.
Not many people know that.
So that's a wrap for today. Paul Angelle with Law Familia. Tell everyone in our audience how they can reach you.
Well, Law Familia, LAWFAMILIA. There's one L. If I misspelled it, it's La Familia, but I changed a lot of law. And it's lawfamilia.net. There's some South American company that has the .com, and I can't get it. Okay. That is a great place to see all the different things that I do. Inappropriate Growth is the name of my podcast. I drop about 3 episodes a week. It's it's growing in popularity. It's on YouTube. It's on Spotify. You can watch it. You can listen to it. But
And your books?
I wrote a
Your
book
books?
called Stop, Back Up, and Grow.
One more time. Repeat the book, please.
It's called Stop, Back Up, Grow. It's a self-help motivational book. It really, you can really see my process. I like to stop. I like to slow down and speed up. I like to make sure the foundation is fixed before we start addressing symptoms. I'm a cause and effect person, but it's really a collection of stories that make points. And I loved making it. I did it during the lockdowns. And I will do free coaching calls for anybody. If they want to see my business plan, I don't hold anything really back. I'll do 1 hour free coaching call to anybody that goes to my website and contact us, get on my calendar, and you'll get a one-to-one call with me. If you're smart, you're paying attention, and you have a lot of free time, there's enough information that I give away that you could go and make your own business plan and hold yourself accountable. But I'm banking on people not having either the free time or the ability to hold themselves accountable.
And so I would say that most people don't. So Paul Angelle from Law Familia, thank you so much for joining Behind the Bench podcast today. It's just been a pleasure to get to know you better.
Thank you.
Signing off.
I enjoyed it.
You're welcome. Signing off for now, Josh Konigsberg, Law Firm Marketing Pros.
Thanks for listening to another fabulous episode of Behind the Bench. I hope you take action on some insight and tips you learned today. If you like what you heard, please like, subscribe, and share.